Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Arizona Scott Selections here for Friday, October 22nd. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap what we So we had a nice winner in hockey with the Carolina Hurricanes on the money line at minus 120 on DraftKings. Was a really sweat-free winner, whether you had the money line, whether you had the puck line, or if you also listened to my other recommendation, which was not laying the juice and potentially taking Carolina to win in regulation at around plus 135. That also won easily. Montreal, I said they were a terrible hockey team from top to bottom. And they played like a terrible hockey team because they lost 4-1. They trailed basically the entire game, and the Hurricanes ended up showcasing some of that talent I was talking about. But either way, look for another winner here on Friday. And for the play today, looking at the NBA, we're going to be looking at a two-pick parlay. It's going to be a money line parlay on two favorites. First game's going to be between the Knicks and the Magic, and I'm taking the Knicks. And a couple reasons why I like the Knicks in this spot. First of all, New York, I know people thought might regress a little bit this year. I know Vegas did because the win total was around 41.5, but the Knicks proved in game one that not really much has changed, as the Knicks are a solid regular season basketball team because they ended up beating the Celtics. Was a thrilling game, went to double overtime. The Knicks should have won regulation. But either way, you're looking at the overall roster. This Knicks team's pretty good. I mean, Randall was awful in the playoff series against Atlanta, but that kind of overshadowed his really fantastic regular season. And Randall had 35, 8, and 9 in that game. You have Mitchell Robinson, who came back from injury, had 11 points, 17 rebounds. RJ Barrett was good, 19 points, 5 rebounds, so he was solid as well. Fournier was one of the main offseason acquisitions, and he had 32 points, hit 6 threes, so that gives them a lot of shooting that they needed. Obi Toppin also played well, 14 points off the bench. Rose was pretty quiet, though. So I do think that if you score 138 points, I know it's in double overtime, but Rose only gives you 9, and quickly only gives you 2. I will acknowledge this Knicks team has actually a decent amount of depth when it comes to scoring, and I think Orlando just doesn't have that luxury. You're looking at Orlando, and that team, in my opinion, is a bottom 3 team in the league. That's not really a hot take. I know everybody likes Jalen Suggs, but you're looking at the rest of the roster, and that team stinks. They scored 97 points against the Spurs. Now, the Spurs aren't supposed to be good either, and the Magic lost on the road by 26 points. But I do think that Orlando is going to lose this game. Now, you might be wondering why I'm not just taking the Knicks to cover. And the reason is because Orlando is going to be playing its first game at home. Knicks were an MSG, insane crowd advantage, and I do wonder if they're going to look a little bit worse on the highway. So I don't really trust them to cover because that involves winning by a decent margin because the spread is decently high for a road team. But I do think they're going to win the game. Orlando, at the end of the day, is just not a very talented roster, and I think the Knicks should end up winning that game probably by 8 or 9 points. But for safety purposes, I'll end up taking them on the money line as the first pick. And the second pick is going to be on the Celtics on the money line, taking on the Raptors in TD Garden. Now, the Raptors burned me for the first game that they had. I was riding the home court advantage angle because they were in Canada for the first time, and it didn't matter. Washington didn't give a damn, and Washington ended up beating that Raptors team by double digits, coasted the entire way, led by what felt like 50 at the half. I think it might have been 20 or 30. But the point is, the Raptors only scored 83 points. This team offensively is a bit challenged. Now, it's not all their fault because Siakam is still out indefinitely, and he is definitely their most talented player. But you picked up Dragic during the offseason in that trade with Lowry, who really didn't look comfortable in his first game. I'm not sure if he's still adjusting to Nick Nurse's system, but Van Vliet was okay. That was pretty much it. Everyone else kind of struggled. And the Celtics ended up losing that double overtime game to the Knicks, but I was impressed with what I saw from the overall roster. Now, of course, Jaylen Brown had 46 points. I'm not expecting that to happen again. Double overtime also helped, but Brown was absolutely nuts. However, I do think that you're going to see less from Brown and more from Tatum because Tatum ended up scoring 20 points, which sounds decent. You look at the actual efficiency numbers, and he was absolutely terrible. He shot 30 times, made 7 shots, and he went 2 for 15 from 3. And yet, even with that terrible performance, the Celtics ended up scoring 134. I think Brown will probably go for 30 in this game, maybe high 20s, but I do think Tatum will probably end up matching him or even exceeding him in this game because those two guys are really, really good. But one of the main takeaways I had, besides the offense, was Robert Williams, who was the starting center for this game because Horford was ruled out because of COVID stuff. And Robert Williams, who had foul trouble pretty much his entire career, looked absolutely nuts against the Knicks. He had 16 points, 10 rebounds, 5 for 5 from the floor, 6 for 8 from the line. But defensively, this guy's one of the most underrated defensive players in the league. When you record 5 blocks and 3 steals in one game as a starter, that just tells you all you need to know. Of course, he had the 9 block game against the Nets off the bench in the postseason last year. I just think that he's going to do a pretty good job of clogging the paint. I think that he'll do a good job trying to stay out of foul trouble once again. But Toronto really doesn't have much of an interior presence. And I do think that the Celtics will be able to really just swat shots at will at the rim. I do think the TD Garden crowd's going to help out as well. Toronto played in Canada. Now they're traveling back to Boston. I don't think it's a great spot, but I do think that Boston will get the job done and win the game. So that two-pick parlay of Knicks money line and Celtics money line currently pays out at -110 on BetMGM. Time recording of 1 a.m. Eastern time, and that's going to be the play today. So play today once again is going to be a two-pick parlay, the Knicks money line and the Celtics money line at -110 on BetMGM. Bye, everyone.